Radio Network. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and I'm excited to be joined once again by my friend and co-host, Zen Garcia, for our continuing study on the life of Abraham versus Nimrod. Zen, are you there, sir?
I am, brother. Good to be here with you again. Looking forward to the continued discussion.
Yeah, me too. How's your week been since last we spoke?
Really good. I've been trying to take some time to just kind of hang out and enjoy the weather, and it's been really beautiful, and I've catching up on some reading, and so just taking some relaxing time to enjoy, Sukkot and just chill out. Diane's coming down tomorrow and is gonna hang out, and we're gonna do a meal, and so yeah, just been resting. I have been working some trying to get this other book on the Dragon Lords out, but I'm not pushing it like I normally do, where I just work the whole day. Taking a lot of time to enjoy the niceness of the weather. It's really beautiful and cool. What's the temperature out where you are?
Oh, it's been really nice here. Yeah. Yeah, it's been in the high 80s, I guess. Probably, yeah.
Yeah, we're in the mid 70s, so and pretty breezy as well. So that makes it really nice.
Yeah, it's like as soon as Sukkot hits, the weather just starts getting perfect.
Right.
Although this is the first year, I think. I'm gonna try to think about that, but yeah, I think this is the first year since I've been doing Sukkot for 10 years now that we didn't get rain in the first 2 to 3 days. No, I may have spoken too soon because we still have a few days left. I know you started probably a couple of days before I did, but normally we get some pretty serious rain within the first couple of days of it starting, but not this year so far.
Yeah, well here I guess it's, with that storm moving in, that probably over the weekend you guys will probably get hit before we will, but it's supposed to rain over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday here. But tomorrow for us is the last day of Sukkot.
Okay, tomorrow's the last day for you, so Saturday is the last day for us on the calendar that we're doing. And like you, I'm not doing as much work as I normally do. I'm kind of watching tutorial videos and things that I want to learn some things on. And when my uncle passed away back in around this time, 2016, I inherited. He had a Honda Goldwing Trike motorcycle.
Nice.
And I haven't been able to do a lot of riding on it, mainly because it's been overheating a lot. And it has very low miles. It's a 2004, but it has 12,000 miles on it. As a 2004, so most of it, it spent most of its time in his garage because shortly after he got it, he ended up getting sick, and when he was taking care of my grandmother also, and so he didn't ride it a whole lot. And then I inherited it in 2017 and started riding it, but it would overheat a lot, and I had assumed that it had been all serviced and everything. Because the guy who was stewarding it for my uncle, he's a mechanic and does that sort of stuff. And he said, oh, yeah, I topped everything off. And so my sister-in-law, her husband, he has built motorcycles from scratch practically. And he's like, oh, there's only a few things could cause that. So we looked at it and he suggested I do something that was a pretty easy fix. So was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday, the day before. I did what he told me to do, and it's riding great now.
Nice.
So
Nice.
I'm gonna take it in, get an inspector, take it into a Honda dealership, make sure it has a really good tune-up, and make sure everything's in good working order. But I had a Honda VTX two-wheel motorcycle, but Sheila didn't like getting on the back of that. So with the trike,
Not as stable, huh?
no, I mean it's like a
Right.
car. I mean you're not gonna knock
Yeah.
this thing over, and it's like riding in a lounge chair, you know. So
Right.
now that it's good riding weather, because here in Texas, there's only a short window of time where it's actually comfortable to ride. Otherwise, it's really stinking hot. You get a
Yeah.
stop at a red light, and all of a sudden, you're completely soaking
Sweating,
wet and
right.
sweat. So I'm eager now that the weather's getting nice, and now that the bike's up and running, to do some good riding with Sheila on the back. I enjoy riding
Awesome.
myself,
That's
but
great.
it's even more fun, I think, when we can go together.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's something about, when you're on two wheels and you're taking the corners and you're leaning and
Oh yeah,
yeah, it's unnerving, especially for the person on the back.
it is. I've been on the back a few times with different people, and I don't mind riding, if I'm driving, but
Right, yeah.
sitting in the back, yeah, it's definitely unnerving. With the trike, I mean, it's pretty much a convertible car.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing, and trying to keep my blood pressure from going through the roof with all the debates and stuff that I've just finished watching. Did you watch the vice president debate?
I did partially. I had a show earlier.
Oh man. I would definitely not vote Democrat for anything, but I would vote
Right.
for what's her face to be easily the most annoying person on earth. I would vote for that. Wow. Although I will say it was a lot more civil
Oh, yeah.
than the
I-
presidential one was.
The presidential, it was like 10 minutes is all I could really even do.
That was an embarrassment. Either way, I don't care which candidate you're for. That
Right.
was it kind of makes you to be a little bit embarrassed to be an American after that one.
Yeah, it was just hard to stomach, and I just couldn't subject myself to it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I went through the whole thing.
Oh, you did? Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
I suffered through the whole thing. Yeah, you kind
You
of.
are a trooper.
Yeah, well, it's like that. That train wreck. You just can't stop watching. It's like,
Right.
man, is it going to get any better? No.
No.
Oh, no. It's like, oh, wow. That's an hour or whatever, however long it was in my life. I'll never get back. Oh well. So, I'm trying to think where. I'm pretty sure we left off in Jasher 12 and Jubilees 12, and we're still not caught up to Genesis 12. Everything that was in Genesis 12. So, rather than jumping into Genesis 13, I thought, well, maybe we could just keep going with where we are in the extra biblical texts. Not sure if you had anything more, any other kind of text that you might want to bring to the table other than Jasher and Jubilees. If you do, feel free. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and read Jasher 13, and maybe if you want to get ready on Jubilees 13.
Yeah, I've got a couple things open from the writings of Abraham. I've got Jasher Jubilees and all that open as well. So,
Okay.
yeah, I've got the writings of Abraham, Chronicles of Jeremiah, the Legends of the Jews, and others. So
Yeah, I'm doing a quick scan of 13, and 13 gets into Genesis. Jubilees 13 gets into Genesis 13 and and Genesis 14 territory. So we're not. I'll probably hold off on Jubilees then, and I'll go ahead and read Jasher, and then if you've got something else that would complement it,
yeah,
we can do that. All right.
all right, sounds good.
Cool. All right, so picking up where we left off, I finished Jasher 12, I believe, last week. Let me just look at that real quick.
I think we had a few verses remaining, but I couldn't tell you where we stopped because
Yeah,
we got
that
near
was
the end of the show.
the whole destroying the idols thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah. Okay, Jasher 13. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, the wife of his son Abram, and all the souls of his household, and went with them from Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. And when they came as far as the land of Haran, they remained there, for it was exceedingly good land for pasture, and of sufficient extent for those who accompanied them. And the people of the land of Haran saw that Abram was good and upright with God and men, and the Lord was with God, and the Lord his God was with him. And some of the people of the land of Haran came and joined Abram, and he taught them in the instruction of the Lord and his ways. And these men remained with Abram in his house, and they adhered to him. And Abram remained in the land 3 years. And at the expiration of 3 years, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am the Lord who brought thee from Kasdim, and delivered thee from the hands of thine enemies. And now, therefore, if thou wilt hearken to my voice, and keep my commandments, my statutes, my laws, then will I cause thy enemies to fall before thee, and I will multiply thy seed like the stars of heaven, and I will send my blessing upon all the works of thy hands, and thou shalt lack nothing. Arise now, take thy wife, and all belonging to thee, and go to the land of Canaan, and remain there. And I will there be unto thee for a God, and I will bless thee. And Abram rose and took his wife, and all belonging to him, and he went to the land of Canaan, as the Lord had told him. And Abram was 50 years old when he went from Haran. And Abram came to the land of Canaan, and dwelt in the midst of the city, and there pitched his tent among the children of Canaan, inhabitants of the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram when he came to the land of Canaan, and said to him, This is the land which I give unto thee, and to thy seed after thee forever. And I will make thy seed like the stars of heaven, and I will go give unto thy seed for an inheritance all the lands which thou seest. And Abram built an altar in the place where God had spoken to him, and Abram there called upon the name of the Lord. At that time, at the end of 3 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, in that year Noah died, which was the 58th year of the life of Abram. And all the days Noah lived were 950 years, and he died. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, he, his wife, and all belonging to him, and all those that accompanied him, together with those that joined him from the people of the land. But Nahor, Abram's brother, and Terah his father, and Lot the son of Haran, and all belonging to them dwelt in Haran. In the 50th year of Abram's dwelling in the land, in the 5th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and all the cities of the plain revolted from the power of Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, for all the kings of the cities of the plain had served Kedorlaomer for 12 years, and given him a yearly tax. But in those days, in the 13th year, they rebelled against him. And in the 10th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, there was war between Nimrod, king of Shinar, and Kedorlaomer, king of Elam. And Nimrod came to fight with Kedorlaomer, and to subdue him. And Kedorlaomer was at that time one of the princes of the hosts of Nimrod. And when all the people at the tower were dispersed, and those that remained were also scattered upon the face of the earth, Kedorlaomer went to the land of Elam, and reigned over it, and rebelled against his lord. And in those days, when Nimrod saw that the cities of the plain had rebelled, he came with pride and anger to war with Kedorlaomer, and Nimrod assembled all his princes and subjects, about 700,000 men, and went against Kedorlaomer. And Kedorlaomer went out to meet him with 5,000 men, and they prepared for battle in the valley of Babel, which is between Elam and Shinar. And all those kings fought there, and Nimrod and his people were smitten before the people of Kedorlaomer, and there fell from Nimrod's men about 600,000, and Mardon, the king's son, fell amongst them. And Nimrod fled and returned in shame and disgrace to his land, and he was under subjection to Kedorlaomer for a long time. And Kedorlaomer returned to his land, and sent princes of his host to the kings that dwelt around him, to Arioch, king of Elasar, and to Tidal, king of Goyim, and made a covenant with them, and they were all obedient to his commands. And it was in the 15th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is the 70th year of the life of Abram, And the Lord appeared to Abram in that year, and he said to him, I am the Lord who brought thee out from Ur-Kasdim to give thee this land for an inheritance. Now therefore walk before me and be perfect, and keep my commands, for to thee and to thy seed I will give this land, and for an inheritance from the river Mizraim unto the great river Euphrates. And thou shalt come to thy fathers in peace and in good age, and the fourth generation shall return here in this land, and shall inherit it forever. And Abram built an altar, and he called upon the name of the Lord who appeared to him, and he brought up sacrifices upon the altar to the Lord. At that time Abram returned and went to Haran to see his father and mother and his father's household. And Abram and his wife and all belonging to him returned to Haran, and Abram dwelt in Haran 5 years. And many of the people of Haran, about 72 men, followed Abram, and Abram taught them the instruction of the Lord and his ways, and he taught them to know the Lord. In those days the Lord appeared to Abram in Haran, and said to him, Behold, I spoke unto thee these 20 years back, saying, Go forth from thy land, from thy birthplace, and from thy father's house, to the land which I have shown thee, to give it to thee and to thy children. And there in that land will I bless thee, and make thee a great nation, and make thy name great, and in thee shall the families of the earth be blessed. Now therefore arise, go forth from this place, thou, thy wife, and all belonging to thee, also every one born in thy house, and all the souls thou hast made in Haran, and bring them out from thee from here, and rise to return to the land of Canaan. And Abram arose and took his wife Sarai, and all belonging to him, and all that were born to him in his house, and the souls which they had made in Haran, and they came out to go to the land of Canaan. And Abram went and returned to the land of Canaan, according to the word of the Lord. And Lot, the son of his brother Haran, went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he went forth from Haran to return to the land of Canaan. And he came to the land of Canaan according to the word of the Lord, to Abram, and he pitched his tent, and he dwelt in the plain of Mamre. And with him was Lot his brother's son, and all belonging to him. And the Lord again appeared to Abram and said, To thy seed will I give this land. And he there built an altar to the Lord who appeared to him, which is still to this day in the plains of Mamre. Now, that's the calling out from Haran that we read in Genesis. Because we see he called out twice. They left Ur the Chaldees, and in one of my presentations on the Yahuwah Triangle, I talk about how Terah was an idol maker, and their patron god was Sin, was the name of I think it was a moon god. And so he did that in Ur the Chaldees, or Kasdim as it says here in Jasher, where Nimrod was ruling. But because of everything that was going on there, they left and they went to the next hotbed for him to make good sales, which was Haran, named after his son who was burned in the fire.
Right.
And so basically Dad just picked up shop and went to the next place where he knew he could do well, doing his thing, because the patron god was still Sin, which I always thought, at least from an English perspective, was rather interesting, that God called Abram out of sin, to go to the land of Canaan. But we just get a snapshot of the second calling, which was the more permanent one, because he went to Canaan and he hung out there for a while, and then he went back to Haran, hung out there for a while, and then God's like, hello, McFly, I told you before, get out. Yeah, and so that's when we see that he leaves here, I think at 75 years of age, I believe it said, which is what we see in the Genesis account, Genesis 12.
Yeah, what I'm going to be reading from goes into some detail about that as well. So.
Yeah, cool. Well, we got about 8 minutes, so if you want to jump in, go for it.
Yeah, I'll start. Okay, yeah, this is the writings of Abraham, chapter 51. But behold, Satan was not content to have me continue to disrupt his kingdom in peace. Therefore he sent a dream unto kingdom Nimrod, in which the king did see that I should be the destruction of himself and of his kingdom. Moreover, it was shown the king in his dream that 3 of his own household, even Zepta, Lilith, and Nefertiti, daughters to Anatai, the son of Nimrod, who were virgins, had joined the believers of the Most High God. When the king awoke from his sleep, he was angry, and he caused that I, with these 3 virgins, Zepta, Lilith, and Nefertiti, should be seized and bound and carried to Potiphar's hill at the head of the plain of Alishem, to be sacrificed unto the god of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And these 3 virgins did the priest of Pharaoh offer up upon the altar, and they died singing praises to the Lord and bearing witness to the truth. Wherefore they shall be blessed forever, for they have entered into the rest of the Lord. And when these virgins were slain, the priests of Pharaoh took me also and laid me upon the altar to slay me. But I cried unto the Lord my God, for I knew that my mission was not yet ended. And the Lord heard my voice and sent his angel to loose the cords wherewith I was bound. And I saw the Lord seated upon his throne. And he said to me, Abram, Abram, behold, my name is Jehovah, and I have heard thee, and I have come down to deliver thee, and to take thee away from the Father's house, and from all thy kindred into a land which is unknown to thee, a land which I have promised unto Noah, should be an eternal inheritance unto the promised seed. Behold, I will lead thee by mine hand, and will put upon thee my name, that thou shalt bear the priesthood of the fathers and the power thereof. As it was with Noah, so shall it be with thee, that through thy minister and the ministry of thy seed, bearing the priesthood, my name shall be known in the earth forever, for I am thy God. And the Lord broke down the altar of the idol gods by an earthquake, and smote their priests, that they were all destroyed. But I hastened to my father's house, where all the believers were gathered, fasting and praying for me. And I said unto them, Up, for this day we shall depart from this city, that the Lord may visit it in wrath and vengeance. Wherefore all the believers gathered together, and followed me out of the city to my camp. And we struck our tents, and departed from the land of Shinar, to go to the city of Shalom, to convert with Father Shem. And my father also, seeing that the king's face would be set against him, gathered together his goods, and followed after me. We journeyed slowly, for I had with me many souls, both women and children, and women with child. When at length we arrived at the city of Shalom, Father Shem came forth to greet us, bearing bread and wine, which he blessed and gave to us. And he said unto me, Blessed art thou, Abraham, or Abram, for the Most High God hath multiplied thee, and behold, thy seed shall be, even as the sand upon the seashore, without number. Go to now with this great multitude into the land of Canaan, for unto thee and thy seed will I give this land for an everlasting inheritance, saith the Lord God Almighty. Amen. Thus we departed from the presence of Shem, and moved to the vicinity of Ludor, which city we denominated Haran. And we dwelt in the suburbs of Haran for 3 years, for there was much pasture there, and a space large enough for the multitude which accompanied me. And I preached the gospel in Haran, and many souls were added unto the truth, the faithful in that place. And there was a famine in the land, but the land of Haran was blessed for our sakes, that the famine there was light. But at the end of 3 years the famine abated throughout the land. Wherefore Lot, my brother's son, and I went before the Lord in prayer, after the manner of the ancients. And in answer to our prayer the Lord appeared unto me, and said, Arise, Abram, and take Lot with thee, and all who follow after thee. For I have purposed to take thee out of Haran, and to make of thee a minister to bear my name, in a strange land which I will give unto thee, unto thy seed after thee, for an everlasting possession, when they hearken to my voice. For I am the Lord thy God. I dwell in the heavens, the earth is my footstool, for I shall surely walk upon it, when I come to redeem my people from their sins. My name is Jehovah, and I know the end from the beginning. Therefore my hand shall be over thee, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee above measure, and make thy name great among all nations, and measure and make, and thou shalt be a blessing unto thy seed after thee, that in their hands they shall bear this ministry and priesthood. even the priesthood of the fathers after the holy order of God unto all nations. And I will bless all them, even as many as shall receive this gospel through thy name, for they shall be called after thy name, even the seed of Abram, as though they were the seed of thine own flesh, and they shall rise up and bless thee as their father. For I will bless them who bless thee, and curse them who curse thee. In thee through the priesthood which thou bearest, and in thy seed through thy priesthood which they shall bear, which cometh down from thy fathers, shall all the families of the earth be blessed with the blessing of the gospel, which are the blessings of salvation, even of life eternal. For I give thee this promise, that thy seed shall sprinkle all nations, that through them the right to this priesthood may encompass all mankind, that all may be brought into the covenant through obedience to the law and the ordinances of the gospel. Now, when the Lord had ceased speaking with me, I praised the Lord, saying, Thy servant hath sought thee earnestly, now have I found thee. Thou didst send thine angels to deliver me from death many times. Shall I not do all things which the Lord my God requireth of me? Blessed art thou, O Lord, who bestowest thy love without measure upon the righteous, but hatest all iniquity. But I have kept thy statutes to walk therein, and have received thine ordinances unto myself, wherein thou hast blessed me with the spirit of knowledge and truth.
From the dawn of man, we have turned to nature to help attain balance within ourselves. But somewhere, we lost our way. Western culture is once again remembering the healing benefits of CBD, the non-psychoactive component of the hemp plant. That's why more and more people who use CBD report relief from inflammation and chronic pain, balanced blood sugar and cardiovascular system, relief from muscle tensions, tremors, migraines, headaches, anxiety, depression, and the list goes on. The big question is, where do you get it? Aya Life is a 99% pure CBD oil made with all organic ingredients, and it's available to TFR listeners worldwide. If you use coupon code TFR at checkout, you'll get $5 towards your order. Head on over to ayalife.com now. That's AYA life.com.
Do you want to lose weight but have no idea where to begin? The Fast Start Diet, a 3-day weight loss plan, is the answer. 3 days of nutritionally balanced, calorie-restricted meals delivered right to your door. No shopping, no measuring, and no cooking. Everything is prepared for you and ready to eat at home or on the go. The Fast Start Diet has all the amazing benefits of intermittent fasting without starving. We've helped thousands of people who have struggled to reach their weight loss goals. Isn't it time we helped you? With the Fast Start Diet, you'll lose weight and feel great.
Find us on Amazon or go to faststartdiet.com and use promo code POWER to get $10 off your first box. As a special bonus, we will include our #1 rated Lipo3 appetite suppressant spray free with your order. Whatever your diet plans are, start with us at faststartdiet.com and use promo code POWER.
More than a dozen astronauts have officially reported UFOs. Hundreds of hours of UFO footage were filmed by astronauts aboard the space shuttle. Many of these UFOs can only be seen in ultraviolet light. Retired former Apollo astronauts and cosmonauts now tell their stories of their own personal UFO encounters.
Unidentified flying objects. The Enigma Channel, intelligent television for planet Earth. EnigmaTV.com.
We are TFR.
My faith in destiny is all I need to prevail.
Truth Frequency Radio.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and right before the break, Zen, you were reading from, this is from the writings of Abraham still, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll continue, unless you want to comment or...
No.
Okay.
I'm making a few notes here, but yeah, go ahead and pick up where you left off. I think would be good.
All right. And just so you know, I will be sending you the book on the Order of the Ancients, which contains this and
nice.
The other one from Elijah. So,
cool.
For my part, I will love thee freely with all my heart and soul. I will cleave to thine holy law to not turn aside therefrom in all thou hast commanded. I have learned through the gift of thine Holy Spirit that no man is able to choose his own way, nor direct his own steps, for all such will fall into the pit. In thine hand is the shaping of each man's soul, which thou hast foreordained to conform to the image of thy Son. Wherefore I will embrace the Son and call upon God for mercy forevermore. Amen. Therefore I took Sarah and Lot and all my family and all Lot's family and all the souls who had joined us in and in Haran, who would come, and we departed out of the land of Canaan. But my father had departed not from his idolatry. Wherefore he remained in the land of Haran, and Nahor also remained with some of the others, who departed not from the truth of the living God. When we had come into the land of Canaan, I built an altar in the plains of Moreh, and offered sacrifice unto the Lord. And the Lord appeared unto me and said, This is the land which I will give unto thee, and to thy seed after thee forever. I will make thy seed like the stars of heaven, and I will give unto them for an inheritance all the land which belongeth unto the Canaanites. For surely I will destroy them from off the face, for the land when their wickedness is full. Wherefore I praised the Lord for his mercy, and we departed from that place, and journeyed towards Bethel. And when I reached Hebron, I tarried there for 2 years, but the famine again waxed great in the land. Hearing that there was no famine in Egypt, I determined to journey into that land, remembering the word of the Lord unto me in that I should declare the mysteries of my God in the land of Egypt. And behold, the Lord blessed us on our journey, that it was made light unto us, and we journeyed until we reached the Kirmion, one of the branches of the river of Egypt, where we rested from our journey for a season, for here the famine was not so severe. But remembering the word of the Lord my God unto me, when we were recovered from our journey, I determined to move forward across the 7 branches of the river of Egypt into the heart of the country of the Egyptians. But on the night before I entered into Egypt, I dreamed a dream, and behold, in my dream I saw a cedar and a palm tree, and the branches of the palm tree were wrapped around the cedar. Suddenly a group of men approached, seeking to cut down the cedar and leave the palm tree to stand alone. But the palm tree cried out, saying, Cut not down the cedar, for whosoever seeketh to fell it shall find the curse of God resting upon him. And so the men desisted, and the cedar was spared by the act of the palm tree. When the dream was ended, I awoke from my sleep and wondered at it. Wherefore I went before the Lord in prayer and besought him, saying, O Lord, show me the interpretation of this dream, which I have had this night. And the Lord said unto me, Behold, Sarah, thy wife, is a beautiful woman to look upon above all the women of the earth. Therefore it shall come to pass, that when the Egyptians shall see her, they will say, She is his wife, and they will seek to slay thee, for the sake of obtaining thy wife. Let Sarah thy wife therefore say unto them, He is my kinsman, and thy soul shall live. For thou art the cedar, O Abram, and Sarah is the palm tree. And this is the interpretation of the dream. For through the act of thy wife thou shalt be saved, and the way will be open for thee to preach the mysteries of goodliness in the court of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. For these Egyptians are thy kindred of the seed of Eber, and it is my will that the truths of the everlasting gospel should be brought to them. Now I had heard while I dwelt in Haran that some of the seed of Eber had entered into Egypt and driven the seed of Ham to the south and taken possession of the land. But these followed not after the God of their father Eber, but worshipped idol gods, even as did my father Terah, but they followed not after the abominations of Nimrod. Now these Hebrew were the seed of Hadaram, the son of Yoktan, the son of Eber, and Yoktan was the brother of Peleg, and Eber was the son of Selah, the son of Apharxad, and the son of Shem. Wherefore the Lord had sent me to preach the gospel unto these, who had departed from the God of their fathers. Wherefore I wakened my wife Sarah, and I said unto her, I have had a dream of the Lord. Tell it to me, she said, that I may know what it is. Therefore I related unto her the dream, and all that the Lord had said to me concerning it. And I added, When the men of the land shall inquire of thee, saying, Who is this who accompanieth thee? Say unto them simply, He is my kinsman. Thus shall my soul live, and the Lord will use their love for thee as a means whereby the gospel shall be preached among them. Fear not to do this thing, for they will neither defile thee, contrary to their covenants, nor slay me, but all shall come to pass to the glory of our God. Sarai, my wife, was fearful when she heard of the danger through which we must pass, and wept that night before the Lord. But she placed her trust in him, and was comforted by his Holy Spirit. The next day we moved on across the 7 branches of the river, and proceeded from where Pharaoh dwelt. But I kept Sarai hidden until we reached Phoan, for it was in the home of Pharaoh that the Lord purposed to use her great beauty to open the heart of Pharaoh unto the work of God. And when we reached the city of Phoan, 3 of Pharaoh's officers met us, and I brought Sarai forth to sit at my right hand while I gave them audience. And according to the word of the Lord, while I attempted to explain unto them our having come there because of the famine in the land of Canaan, and that we sojourned among them, they kept bestowing compliments upon Sarah for her great beauty and wisdom and the luster of her countenance. And when the men departed from me, they went directly into the presence of Pharaoh. And when they had eaten with him, he had good wine brought forth. While they drank together, they began to speak unto him of what had transpired. But all they could speak of were the beauties of Sarai. How beautiful is the woman Sarai, they said, who sitteth at Abram's right hand. How comely is the shape of her face, how delicate and fine spun are her tresses. How beautiful her eyes, how delicate is her nose, and the whole luster of her countenance. How fair are her breasts, and how comely withal is her complexion. How comely too are her arms, and how perfect her hands. How pleasing are her hands to behold, how lovely her palms, how long and slender her fingers. How comely are her feet, how well rounded her thighs. None of the maidens and none of the brides that enter the bride chamber are fairer than she. Her beauty is greater than all other women, and she excels them all. Moreover, along with all this beauty, she hath great wisdom, and the workmanship of her hands is fair indeed. When he heard these words, Pharaoh lusted after Sarai and sent his servants to fetch her to him. Knowing it to be the will of the Lord, I let her go, although mine heart was grieved within me. When Pharaoh saw her, his lust grew within him, for he was overcome by her beauty, and he took her into his household as his wife, and sent men to slay me, that I might not rise up to claim her. But Sarai, seeing these things, said unto Pharaoh, He is but my kinsman. Wherefore Pharaoh called back his men, and my life was spared. But Lot and I and all our household spent that night in prayer before the Lord for Sarai, that she might accomplish her mission, and that she might not be defiled contrary to her covenants. And I stood with mine arms stretched out toward heaven, after the holy order of God, and I said, Blessed art thou, O Lord, the Most High God, Lord of all worlds, and Lord and ruler over all things. I know that thou dost rule over all the kings of the earth, executing judgment upon them in righteousness, even as thou didst save me from the evil designs of the might of King Nimrod. Now do I complain before thee concerning Pharaoh of Phoan, king of Egypt, who hath violently abducted my wife Sarai for me. Wreak justice upon him in my behalf, and let me behold thine hand wax mighty against him and against all his household, and let him not be able this night to defile my wife contrary to her covenants. Let them come to know, O Lord, thou art Lord of all the kings of the earth, and the ruler of all men. For this cause did I suffer Sarai to go among them according to thy counsel. And God hearkened unto my prayer, withheld his spirit from the Egyptians, that none of them were able to come at their wives that night. In the morning, consternation reigned throughout the land of Egypt, for no man had been able to lie with his wife all that night. Pharaoh also was greatly perplexed, for although his lust towards Sarai had grown throughout the night, he had been unable to satisfy that lust because of the curse of God which rested upon him. Therefore he summoned all his wise men and the physicians of his household, but none could heal him, and all had suffered the same affliction. And then the Spirit of the Lord fell upon Sarai, and she said, My Lord, it is indeed a sad matter that this affection should be upon thee. My kinsman Abram is a man full of wisdom and of the Spirit of our God. Send for him, therefore, and he shall tell thee how to be delivered from these bonds, that thou mayest be freely unto me to thyself. Now this he said at the direction of the Lord our God. And the Lord softened Pharaoh's heart, that the hearkened unto her words, and he sent Shulem, one of his chief ministers, unto my camp. When Shulem arrived in camp, he was according to my directions, led to the tent of Lot. And when he had entered the tent, he bowed before Lot and said, My Lord, Pharaoh and all the males of the land of Egypt have been cursed that they are unable to come at their wives. But it hath been told Pharaoh by his handmaiden Sarai that her kinsman Abram is a man full of wisdom and of the Spirit of your God. Let him therefore come and lay his hands upon my lord Pharaoh, and pray for him, that he might be healed and live. But Lot said to him, As long as his wife Sarai remains with the king, my uncle Abram will not be able to pray for him. Be off thou and tell the king to release the woman to her husband. Then he will pray for him, and he will be healed. When Shulem heard these words, he was amazed, and he went straightway to the king. My lord king, said he, this curse hath come on account of Sarai, the wife of Abram. Let Sarai be but restored to her husband Abram, and this curse will be lifted from off all the males of Egypt. Upon bearing these words, the king asked Sarai, asking, Is this thing so? Yea, my lord, she replied, and it is done, that thou mightest behold the power of God. For when thine heart lusted after me, thou shouldst have asked, and not taken me by force. But this is done, that the glory of God might be revealed, that thou shouldst turn from the worship of the dumb idols to the worship of the true and living God. Hearing these words, Pharaoh summoned me to him, and when I entered his presence, he asked, What is this that hath been done? For I have taken Sarah to wife, while she was yet your wife, and for this thing a curse hath fallen upon me, and all the males in the land of Egypt. Therefore pray for me, that this curse may be removed from us. According to Pharaoh's request, I laid my hands upon him, and prayed over him, and he and all the males of Egypt were healed. And when the king had been blessed, he was that he had recovered, and he praised the Lord for his recovery. Wherefore I took him into his garden and baptized him in the name of the Lord, and all his household with him. And when I had blessed him again, Sarai came before him, and he knew that he had been healed, for the Spirit of God fell upon him with this testimony, and the witness thereof was sure. Then Pharaoh arose and praised the Lord, and proclaimed to all his people that they should worship the Most High God, who had healed them. And he desired to enter into a covenant of eternal brotherhood with me, that I should be his father, and he should be my son. Wherefore I said unto Pharaoh, Put forth thine hand upon my thigh, and I will make thee swear before the Lord, the God of heaven and earth, that thou shalt be true to me, and thine heirs to mine heirs forever. And I shall receive thee unto myself, to be my son and brother, to inherit all the blessing of mine house, and to bear my priesthood forever. Wherefore Pharaoh put his hand upon my thigh, and swore to me according to this oath. And when he had sworn, Lot sealed him mine, that he should be my son in time and eternity, and Pharaoh rejoiceth therein. And the king clothed me in his own robes, and seated me upon his throne, placing his own crown upon my head, and his scepter in mine hand. And I did teach him and his people in all the mysteries of goodliness, from first to last. For Pharaoh did introduce me into the temple, which had been built by the fathers, commenced by father Seth, and completed by father Shem, after the great flood. And therein I did officiate in the rites and ordinances of the house of the Lord. And Pharaoh made all matters right with Sarai, and he blessed her with the outpouring of his spirit, and she was blessed in his presence. And he gave unto her Hagar, his own daughter, also to be her companion. And to Hagar he gave many gifts. And I was 7 years in the land of Egypt, teaching the gospel and administering unto Pharaoh and his household, and all the Egyptians the blessing rites and ordinances of the gospel with the power thereof. And I established among them the order of the fathers and the priesthood thereof, until the name of Jehovah was glorified throughout the land of Egypt. And I taught the people the nature of the heavens and the earth, and the plan of salvation, and the blessings of the Lord unto those who serve him in purity of heart, and to believe on the Son of God, who should come to make an atonement for their sins. And so great was the power of God among us, that in time all the Egyptians had turned from their idolatry to the worship of the true God, and I and my people had cause to rejoice in the fruits of labors. At the end of 7 years the Lord visited me, and he said unto me, Blessed art thou, Abram, servant of the Most High, for thy joy shall be great in my mansion, with this multitude which thou hast brought unto me. Wherefore thy name shall no more be called Abram, but Abraham shalt thou be called, which is by interpretation, father of a multitude. Moreover, thy wife Sarai shall no longer be called by that name, but Sarah shall she be called, which signifieth a queen. For Sarah have I chosen and appointed to be thy queen of queens, for from her shall issue the promised seed, even him who shall be thine heir. Behold, the day cometh when the seed of Ham shall again rule in this land, and at that day thy seed shall be in bondage to them. But I will raise up a prince from among the Egyptians, who shall lead them out of bondage, and they shall inherit the land of Canaan, even that land which I have promised unto thee, and to thy seed after thee, for an everlasting inheritance. Moreover, from the loins of thine hair shall proceed the Messiah, even the Son of God, who shall walk upon the earth, ministering to the poor and lowly, who shall be lifted up at that price, up that the price might be paid for the original sin of Adam and for the sins of all mankind, that all who will believe on his name and receive his ordinances and keep his commandments shall not perish, but inherit everlasting life. Moreover, in the last days I will raise up out of the loins of thine heir a choice seer, through whom the fullness of my gospel shall be restored to the earth, and all things shall be restored as in the beginning. For upon him shall rest the priesthood of his fathers, and he shall commence the organization of that holy order which was in the beginning of the world, which shall be consummated before the Son of God shall walk again upon the earth. These promises are thine, my son, and I say unto thee, thou shalt be exalted and dwell with me in the mansion of my Father. Now take thy people and return into the land of Canaan, for there have I a mission for thee, and there shall the promises come to pass in thy behalf. I think I should probably stop there.
Wow, man. I'm totally captivated by this reading.
Yeah, it's a really most amazing manuscript, especially, since it incorporates knowledge of the Son and prophecies of his coming, and even that he would be born of Isaac. I mean, it's really an amazing text.
Well, yeah, I'd still love to be able to track down the age of the tomb or whatever that it was found in.
Right.
To see
right.
how far back this thing goes, because I mean, if this really is an ancient text that goes way back to ancient pharaohs or whatever, I mean, it's extremely prophetic, especially the last chapter you just read, chapter 77.
Right.
Like wow.
Yeah, there's just not a lot about it, which is unfortunate. Just some of those manuscripts, you just don't have a lot of information, which is, again, unfortunate. But just as we were reading from like the book of Jasher and Jubilees, and even from the scriptures, Genesis and the Bible itself, it just correlates with so much that is contained therein.
Well, I mean, we got a massive cliff note, like it's barely a bullet point in chapter 12 to what we've just read in Jasher and what you just read in that text. I mean, well, you have, first of all, the gospel being preached.
Yes.
So,
and the relation of the dream, as to why he
did what he did.
Sarah, yeah.
Well, yeah, and I don't think it takes a whole lot of reading into the text. It sounds like God gave all the Egyptians EDS.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, hey, nothing's working here.
Right.
And then it's like, well, that's Lot spilled the beans in that story. He said, hey, Abram is Sarah's husband. Give her back, and everything will be good. And Pharaoh's like, what? So. And they're like, yeah, so we did this so that, God will be manifest before and okay, so here's the deal, he's going to preach the gospel, he gets baptized, comes out, apparently stuff starts working again. And he's like, hey! So it's like Pharaoh gets healed of EDS, it repents, and then like the whole land is like happy again. And all of a sudden now it makes sense why they gave him so much wealth and they're leaving. It says, in Genesis 12, you don't really get much of anything there. You're like, what the heck? And now all of a sudden, like they're giving them all this sheep and herds, and he gives Hagar to him, which later on we'll see what happens with Hagar.
Right.
But it's kind of comical when you think about it.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and then you have this whole thing repeated with Abimelech.
Yeah,
which
later
is
on.
Funny too. Yeah.
Does the writings of Abraham get into that story as well?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, cool. Yeah, man, we got a lot of good stuff to read here then. Because I haven't got to the famine and going down to Egypt part in Jasher yet, so we'll pick up in Jasher when I get back.
Sounds good.
But man, he's 7 years in Egypt witnessing, and to offspring of Eber. I'd love to unpack that more.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because you don't get that anywhere else.
No, and Lilith and Nefertiri.
Nefertiti. Yeah.
Well, it's Nefertiri.
Oh, is it Nefertiti? Okay.
But it makes you wonder. Well, because that was she was one of the 3 virgins, I guess, that were sacrificed, or what?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sacrificed by Nimrod.
Man.
Because they began to worship the Most High.
Wow, there's just a lot going on there. Well, we'll when we come back from the break, I will pick up in Jasher and try to get us caught up to the same time period, roughly, of them finally going down to Egypt and then returning from Egypt.
All right, sounds good.
All right, and so we'll go to break now.
My name is Ella, and I'm 10 years old. I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
This is a Fox News alert, a more civil debate. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The vice presidential debate taking a much more measured tone compared to last week's presidential debate marred by interruptions. Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris sparred over taxes, the economy, and the COVID pandemic.
They knew what was happening and they didn't tell you.
Harris putting Pence on the defensive over the Trump administration's handling of the coronavirus.
They knew and they covered it up. The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness of it. The president said you're on one side of his ledger if you wear a mask, you're on the other side of his ledger if you don't. And in spite of all of that, today they still don't have a plan.
The reality is that we will have a vaccine, we believe, before the end of this year. And it will have the capacity to save countless American lives. And your continuous undermining of confidence in a vaccine is just it's just unacceptable.
The debate is the first since the president contracted COVID-19 and as the virus claims nearly 212,000 lives in the U.S. As the candidates debated the condition of American life and what to do about it, tensions rise in Minnesota. The governor activating the National Guard for what he calls an abundance of caution after the former Minneapolis police officer charged with killing George Floyd bonded out of jail. Hurricane Delta is gaining strength over the Gulf of Mexico and is expected to strike Louisiana Friday. Governor John Bell urging people to get ready.
By the end of the day, Thursday, you need to be where you intend to be as you ride out the storm.
A hurricane watch is up for areas from Grand Isle, Louisiana to High Island, Texas. America's listening to Fox News.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and we're going into the second hour. As usual, time is flying by, covering lots of interesting stuff on the life of Abraham. And there was actually something I wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about really so far. Well, maybe we did. I'm trying to remember if we talked about the importance of Shechem. Like, why Shechem? Why did God call Abram out of Ur of the Chaldees? They went to Haran. He goes to Canaan, and then he goes back to Haran, hangs out there for a while, and then God's like, look, get out of here. When he's 75 years old, get down. And in the Genesis account, it says he stops him in Shechem. And I always wondered, like, what was the deal with Shechem? And so back in 2014, there was actually a concept that I've had for a long time called the Yahuwah Triangle that plays a big part in the TV series Seed that I'm working on. And I had created this diagram. The Yahuwah Triangle, what I call the Yahuwah Triangle, is basically 3 points on a map. And those 3 points are Egypt, Jerusalem, or Egypt, Israel, and Babylon. And so if you take if you mark on the map, let's say Giza Plateau, Jerusalem, and Babylon, and connect those dots, you have a triangle that I call the Yahuwah Triangle. And the reason I call it that is because the whole Bible seems to ping pong between events in those places. It's like something is created or renewed in Egypt, and it goes from there to Canaan, or to Israel, or to Jerusalem, or to Shechem, and that whole region right there, and you're good there. That's Yahuwah's land. And if you obey him, you're good to go. If you disobey, you get booted out. Where do you get booted out to? You get booted out to Babylon. And that's where that's your timeout place. And if you learn your lesson there, then you repent, and then you get to go back into Israel. If you don't, you might end up back in Egypt again, where you have to be renewed, and then the whole cycle starts all over again. So it was a thesis that I've had for a long time, and back in 2014, I finally sat down and put it into a 10-hour teaching series called the Yahuwah Triangle, that I later modified into the Genesis Revelation series, because partly because the first part of the Yahuwah Triangle series was all about the globe. And that was December of 2014. Little would I know that 4 months later my whole world would be turned upside down, literally, and I would have to go back and change everything. But mainly the first part of that presentation. But going into the rest of the presentation, I began to wonder, like, what is the deal with Shechem in the first place? Like, why there, and why did God call him there? And I came to believe that basically God was calling Abraham back to the Garden of Eden, and that the whole region right there was ground zero in the Garden of Eden. And I've got a map on the screen for people watching on YouTube that shows the path that he took from Ur of the Chaldees up through the Levant down into, he stops him in Shechem, and then of course there's back and forth in there for a while, and then he ends up going down to Egypt, as we were just reading. But when I started looking into Shechem, a bunch of bullet points. Shechem was the first plot of land within Canaan owned by the house of Abram. We see that in Genesis 33, 18 through 20. For the sake of time, I'm not going to read that, but that's where he purchases the land. And that's where Dinah was raped by Shechem, the man for whom the land was named. Simeon and Levi took vengeance and killed him for it, Genesis 34. After Joseph had his dream concerning the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him, his brothers became angry. They leave to go tend their father's flock in Shechem. Jacob/Israel later sends his beloved son Joseph to go find them in Genesis 37. The word Shechem means diligence or early rising. While looking for his brothers in the place of early rising, he meets a certain man who, I'm trying to remember if Jasher tells you who it is. We don't find
Gabriel.
out. Is it Gabriel? Certain man?
I think it mentions it in either the Targum or the writings of Abraham.
Jasher. Yeah, Gabriel or somebody
Gabriel,
tells him that his brothers have departed for Dothan, and the word Dothan means double sickness. So the English word diligence means the attention and care legally expected or required of a person as a party to a contract. So they left their place of carefully tending to their father's flock to go to the place of double sickness in order to lay in wait for their brother whom they plotted to kill and destroy. After the Exodus and the 40 years wandering in the wilderness, the children of Israel crossed the Jordan and were told to go to Shechem, build an altar on Mount Ebal, and divide the tribes in half, with one part on Mount Gerizim to pronounce the blessings of the Torah, and the other on Mount Ebal to pronounce the curses. That's in Deuteronomy 11:29 through 20 and 27:1 through 29:1. And Shechem was a place that Scripture says that God split in half in Psalm 60 and Psalm 108. And if you look at it on Google Earth, it looks like it was once a complete mountain range that was split in half, and then it almost looks like somebody did like a figure eight right in the middle of the split right there. And I came across a video, I'm not going to play it here for the sake of time, that Jim Staley had done on the Torah portion Ra'ah. And he put this part together. I had already put this other stuff together and was already doing all this, and I happened to walk by. Sheila was in the kitchen listening to Jim Staley's teaching. Right at the part where he was saying that basically the punchline of his thesis was that the reason for them going back to this location was that's the location where God cuts the covenant with Abraham. Remember, God puts him to sleep, and he kills the animals, and he cuts the covenant. So he was saying that that's where the covenant was made, and then 430 years later from that giving of the covenant, they went back to the same location, to ground zero there, and split the tribes, half on Gerizim, half on Ebal. But I was wondering, like, why were they doing all that there? Well, I believe that's because that is the location where the original covenant was broken, that Adam and Eve had partaken of the fruit, and that was ground zero, and that the tree of life was at the location of Gerizim, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was at Ebal. And that's why the curses were on Ebal and the blessings were on Gerizim. And that's why it was split, and that's why there was a figure eight covenant cut right there. And so as part of that thesis, and I talk a lot more about this in the presentation, but I also talk about, let's see, I'm going to skip through all this just for the sake of time, that Israel, let me continue with Shechem. It was a city of refuge within the promised land, Joshua 21:21. Joshua gathered all the tribes and elders of Israel and made a covenant with the people at Shechem in Joshua 24:25. The bones of Joseph, which were brought up from Egypt, were buried in Shechem, and the city became the inheritance of the children of Joseph in Joshua 24:32. The conversation Yeshua had with the Samaritan woman at the well took place at a place believed to have been a suburb of Shechem in John 4:3 through 42. Jacob's well is one of the few spots about the position of which all travelers are agreed. Jesus, passing from south to west, would pass up the valley of Machna until the road turns sharp to the west to enter the valley of Shechem between Ebal and Gerizim. Here is Jacob's field, and in the field is Jacob's well. That's according to Ellicott's commentary for English readers on the Gospel of John, chapter 4, verse 6. And I believe that there's a scripture here in Hosea 6:7 through 10. But like Adam, you broke my covenant and betrayed my trust. And it talks about murderers traveling around the road to Shechem. So there's an interesting possible connection right there. And I just, in the course of that research, I came to believe that this is the location. It is my firm belief that Abram was led out of sin to Shechem, and that Yahuwah made his covenant of promise there, and that the Israelites, upon entering the land, had to first stop there, write out the commandments, and pronounce the blessings and curses, because this is ground zero in the Garden of Eden. There's so much more I could talk about there, but I won't for the sake of getting through some other things here on this broadcast. So let me switch over to Jasher. If you want to know more about that, check out my Yahuwah Triangle series and or my Genesis Revelation series, all of which are on YouTube in various different versions that I've done at conferences in different places. So let me switch over to Jasher.
Let me share one comment with regard to that well.
Yeah.
The well that that Yahushua meets the woman and tells her, prophetically about her husbands and everything. That same well is where Eleazar is sent to bring a wife for Isaac.
Nice.
And meets Rebekah there. And it's also that same well that Jacob later goes down and meets Rachel. And it's also later where Moshe meets Zipporah, his wife.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, all three of the patriarchs meet their wives there at that particular well as well. Yeah. I write about that in great detail in the Vestures of Light and the Rod of Wonder.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's all of that to picture because, originally we were supposed to be in a covenant relationship with God, like it's likened unto a marriage. So for all of those brides to be connected there,
yeah,
that's really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, switching over to Jasher, chapter 14. There's an interesting character here, and there's a derivative spelling, but I believe this is talking about Osiris here in chapter 14. In those days, there was in the land of Shinar a wise man who had understanding and all wisdom, and of a beautiful appearance, but he was poor and indigent. His name was Reichion, and he was hard set to support himself. And he resolved to go to Egypt, to Osiris, spelled Osiris, the son of Anam, king of Egypt, to show the king his wisdom, for perhaps he might find grace in his sight to raise him up and give him maintenance. And Reichion did so. And when Reichion came to Egypt, he asked the inhabitants of Egypt concerning the king, and the inhabitants of Egypt told him the custom of the king of Egypt, for it was then the custom of the king of Egypt that he went from his royal palace, and he was seen abroad only one day in the year. And after that the king would return to his palace to remain there. And on that day, when the king went forth, he passed judgment in the land, and everyone having a suit came before the king that day to obtain his request. And when Reichion heard of the custom in Egypt, and that he could not come into the presence of the king, he grieved greatly and was very sorrowful. And in the evening Reichion went out and found a house in ruins, formerly a bake house in Egypt, and he abode there all night in bitterness of soul, and pinched with hunger, and sleep was removed from his eyes. And Reichion, considering within himself what he should do in the town until the king made his appearance, and how he might maintain himself there. And he rose in the morning and walked about, and met in his way those who sold vegetables and various sorts of seed, with which they supplied the inhabitants. And Reichion wished to do the same in order to get a maintenance in the city, but he was unacquainted with the custom of the people, and he was like a blind man among them. And he went and obtained vegetables to sell them for his support. And the rabble assembled about him and ridiculed him, and took his vegetables from him, and left him nothing. And he rose up from there in bitterness of soul, and went sighing to the bakehouse in which he had remained all the night before, and he slept there the second night. And on that night again he reasoned within himself how he could save himself from starvation, and he devised a scheme how to act. And he rose up in the morning and acted ingeniously, and went and hired 30 strong men of the rabble, carrying their war instruments in their hands, and he led them to the top of the Egyptian sepulchre, and he placed them there. And he commanded them, saying, Thus saith the king, Strengthen yourselves, and be valiant men, and let no man be buried here until 200 pieces of silver be given, and then he may be buried. And those men did according to the order of Reichion to the people of Egypt the whole of that year. And in 8 months' time Reichion and his men gathered great riches of silver and gold, and Reichion took a great quantity of horses and other animals, and he hired more men, and he gave them horses, and they remained with him. And when the year came around, At the time the king went forth into the town, all the inhabitants of Egypt assembled together to speak to him concerning the work of Rikon and his men. And the king went forth on the appointed day, and all the Egyptians came before him and cried unto him, saying, May the king live forever! What is this thing thou doest in the town to thy servants, not to suffer a dead body to be buried until so much silver and gold be given? Was there ever the like unto this done in the whole earth? From the days of former kings, yea, even from the days of Adam unto this day, that the dead should not be buried only for a set price? We know it to be the custom of kings to take a yearly tax from the living, but thou dost not only do this, but from the dead also? Thou exactest a tax day by day? Now, O king, we can no more bear this, for the whole city is ruined on this account, and dost thou not know it? And when the king heard all that they had spoken, he was very wroth, and his anger burned within him at this affair, for he had known nothing of it. And the king said, Who and where is he that dares to do this wicked thing in my land without my command? Surely you will tell me. And they told him all the works of Rikon and his men, and the king's anger was aroused, and he ordered Rikon and his men to be brought before him. And Rikon took about 1,000 children, sons and daughters, and clothed them in silk and embroidery, and he set them upon horses, and sent them to the king by means of his men. And he also took a great quantity of silver and gold and precious stones, and a strong and beautiful horse as a present for the king, with which he came before the king and bowed down to the earth before him. And the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Egypt wondered at the work of Rikon, and they saw his riches and the present that he brought to the king, and it greatly pleased the king, and he wondered at it. And when Rikon sat before him, the king asked him concerning all his works, and Rikon spoke all his words wisely before the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Egypt. And when the king heard the words of Rikon and his wisdom, Rikon found grace in his sight, and he met with grace and kindness from all the servants of the king, and from all the inhabitants of Egypt, on account of his wisdom and excellent speeches. And from that time they loved him exceedingly. And the king answered and said to Rikon, Thy name shall no more be called Rikon, but Pharaoh shall be thy name, since thou didst exact a tax from the dead. And he called his name Pharaoh. So that's where the name Pharaoh comes from, a death tax. And the king and his subjects loved Rikon for his wisdom, and they consulted with all the inhabitants of Egypt to make him prefect under the king. And all the inhabitants of Egypt and his wise men did so, and it was made a law in Egypt. And they made Rikon Pharaoh prefect under Osiris king of Egypt. And Rikon Pharaoh governed over Egypt, daily administering justice to the whole city. But Osiris the king would judge the people of the land one day in the year, when he went out to make his appearance. And Rikon Pharaoh cunningly usurped the government of Egypt, and he exacted a tax from all the inhabitants of Egypt. And all the inhabitants of Egypt greatly loved Rikon Pharaoh, and they made a decree to call every king that should reign over them and their seed in Egypt Pharaoh. Therefore all the kings that reigned in Egypt from that time forward were called Pharaoh unto this day. And in that year there was a heavy famine. So it was sort of like, meanwhile, this is what was going on in Egypt to set the stage before Abraham goes down there. And in that year there was a heavy famine throughout the land of Canaan, and the inhabitants of the land could not remain on account of the famine, for it was very grievous. And Abram and all belonging to him rose and went down to Egypt on account of the famine. And when they were at the brook Mitzrayim, they remained there some time to rest from the fatigue of the road. And Abram and Sarah were walking at the border of the brook Mitzrayim, and Abram beheld his wife Sarai, that she was very beautiful. And Abram said to his wife Sarai, Since God has created thee with such a beautiful countenance, I am afraid of the Egyptians, lest they should slay me and take thee away. For the fear of God is not in these places. Surely then thou shalt do this. Say thou art my sister, to all that may ask thee, in order that it may be well with me, and that we may live and not be put to death. And Abram commanded the same to all those that came with him to Egypt on account of the famine. Also his nephew Lot he commanded, saying, If the Egyptians ask thee concerning Sarai, say she is the sister of Abram. And yet with all these orders Abram did not put confidence in them, but he took Sarai and placed her in a chest and concealed it among their vessels. For Abram was greatly concerned about Sarai on account of the wickedness of the Egyptians. And Abram and all belonging to him rose up from the brook Mitzrayim and came to Egypt. And they had scarcely entered the gates of the city when the guards stood up to them, saying, Give tithe to the king from what you have, and then you may come into the town. And Abram and those that were with him did so. And Abram with the people that were with him came to Egypt. And when they came, they brought the chest in which Sarai was concealed, and the Egyptians saw the chest. And the king's servants approached Abram, saying, What hast thou here in this chest which we have not seen? Now open thou the chest, and give tithe to the king of all that it contains. And Abram said, This chest I will not open, but you all demand upon it I will give. And Pharaoh's officers answered Abram, saying, It is the chest of precious stones. Give us the tenth thereof. Abram said, All that you desire I will give thee, but you must not open the chest. And the king's officers pressed Abram, and they reached the chest and opened it with force. And they saw, and behold, a beautiful woman was in the chest. And when the officers of the king beheld Sarai, they were struck with admiration at her beauty. And all the princes and servants of Egypt assembled to see Sarai, for she was very beautiful. And the king's officers ran and told Pharaoh all that they had seen, and they praised Sarai to the king. And Pharaoh ordered her to be brought, and the woman came before the king. And Pharaoh beheld Sarai, and she pleased him exceedingly, and he was struck with her beauty. And the king rejoiced greatly on her account, and made presents to those who brought him the tidings concerning her. And the woman was then brought to Pharaoh's house, and Abram grieved on account of his wife, and he prayed to the Lord to deliver her from the hands of Pharaoh. And Sarai also prayed at that time, and said, O Lord God, thou didst tell my Lord Abram to go from his land and from his father's house to the land of Canaan, and thou didst promise to do well with him if he would perform thy commands. Now behold, we have done that which thou didst command us, and we left our land and our families, and we went to a strange land and to a people whom we had not known before. And we came to this land to avoid the famine, and this evil accident has befallen me. Now therefore, O Lord God, deliver us and save us from the hand of this oppressor, and do well with me for the sake of thy mercy. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Sarai, and the Lord sent an angel to deliver Sarai from the power of Pharaoh. And the king came and sat before Sarai, and behold, an angel of the Lord was standing over them, and he appeared to Sarai and said to her, Do not fear, for the Lord has heard thy prayer. And the king approached Sarai and said to her, What is that man to thee who brought thee hither? And she said, He is my brother. And the king said, It is incumbent upon us to make him great, to elevate him, and to do unto him all the good which thou shalt command us. And at that time the king sent to Abram silver and gold and precious stones in abundance, together with cattle, men, servants, and maidservants. And the king ordered Abram to be brought, and he sat in the court of the king's house. And the king greatly exalted Abram on that night. And the king approached to speak to Sarai, and he reached out his hand to her, when the angel smote him heavily, and he was terrified, and he refrained from reaching to her. And when the king came near to Sarai, the angel smote him to the ground, and acted thus to him the whole night. He's getting smacked around. And the king was terrified. And the angel on that night smote heavily on the servants of the king and the whole household on account of Sarai. And there was a great lamentation that night amongst the people of Pharaoh's house. And Pharaoh, seeing the evil that befell him, said, Surely on account of this woman this thing has happened to me. And he removed himself at some distance from her, and spake pleasing words to her. And the king said to Sarai, Tell me, I pray thee, concerning the man with whom thou camest here. And Sarai said, This man is my husband. And I said to thee that he is my brother, for I was afraid lest thou shouldest put him to death through wickedness. And the king kept away from Sarai, and the plagues of the angel of the Lord ceased from him and his household. And Pharaoh knew that he was smitten on account of Sarai, and the king was greatly astonished at this. And in the morning the king called for Abram, and said to him, What is this thou hast done to me? Why didst thou say, She is my sister, owing to which I took her unto me for a wife? And this heavy plague has therefore come upon me and my household. Now therefore, here is thy wife, take her, and go from our land, lest we all die on her account. And Pharaoh took more cattle, men, servants, and maidservants, and silver and gold to give to Abram. And he returned unto him Sarai his wife. And the king took a maiden whom he begat by his concubines, and he gave her to Sarai for a handmaid. And the king said to his daughter, It is better for thee, my daughter, to be a handmaid in this man's house than to be mistress in my house, after we have beheld the evil that befell us on account of this woman. And Abram arose, and he and all belonging to him went away from Egypt, and Pharaoh ordered some of his men to accompany him, and all that went with him. And Abram returned to the land of Canaan, to the place where he had made the altar, where he at first had pitched his tent. And Lot, the son of Haran, Abram's brother, had a heavy stock of cattle, flocks, and herds, and tents, for the Lord was bountiful to them on account of Abram. And when Abram was dwelling in the land, the herdsmen of Lot quarreled with the herdsmen of Abram, for their property was too great for them to remain together in the land, and the land could not bear them on account of their cattle. When Abram's herdsmen went to feed their flock, they would not go into the fields of the people of the land, but the cattle of Lot's herdsmen did otherwise, for they were suffered to feed in the fields of the people of the land. And the people of the land saw this occurrence daily, and they came to Abram and quarreled with him on account of Lot's herdsmen. And Abram said to Lot, What is this thou art doing to me, to make me despicable to the inhabitants of the land, that thou orderest thy herdsmen to feed thy cattle in the fields of other people? Dost thou not know that I am a stranger in this land amongst the children of Canaan? And why wilt thou do this unto me? And Abram quarreled daily with Lot on account of this, but Lot would not listen to Abram, and he continued to do the same, and the inhabitants of the land came and told Abram. And Abram said unto Lot, How long wilt thou be to me a stumbling block with the inhabitants of the land? Now I beseech thee, let there be no more quarreling between us, for we are kinsmen. But I pray thee separate from me, go and choose a place where thou mayest dwell with thy cattle and all belonging to thee, but keep thyself at a distance from me, thou and thy household. And be not afraid in going from me, for if any one do any injury to thee, let me know, and I will avenge thy cause for him. Only remove from me. Oh, on a break.
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. By Christine, great for heart palpitations. By Anne, before I started using this product, every afternoon my ankles and my hands would be swollen. That doesn't happen anymore. So if that part of their advertising is true, I have to assume that the rest of it is also. Not to mention that when I had my yearly blood test, only a few weeks after beginning to use this product, my cholesterol had dropped over 30 points. I'm going to continue to take it. By Croc, I love this product. It really works. By Brad, works great, thank you. Tell us your story. Get your Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Your home has needs. It needs a healthy, dry environment all year round. Start by getting rid of the worst air in the basement and crawl space, where the problems begin and make the whole house sick. Introducing the new Smart Wave Ventilation Unit. It has advanced technologies to continuously reduce moisture, mold, and odors, and expel radon, gases, and pollutants. And now, Wave units include carbon monoxide detection to automatically expel air at a high rate and send you an alert. It also has an app so you can remotely monitor the conditions. Wave is a comprehensive, maintenance-free, affordable solution that will transform your entire home. Protect your home and family with what it needs. Give it a new Smart Wave Ventilation Unit. For more information, call 888-717-WAVE. That's 888-717-WAVE. Or go to dryhealthyhome.com. That's dryhealthyhome.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
Jacob Frank Leibovich is the mastermind behind a global network of satanic cults. He taught that the Creator God was evil. Jacob Frank proclaimed himself as the true Messiah. He vowed never to tell the truth. He rejected every moral law and declared that the only way to a new society was through the total destruction of civilization. Murder, rape, incest, and the drinking of blood were perfectly acceptable actions and rituals. His followers established the Marxist system and have infiltrated Islam and Judaism. He was the Messiah of the Illuminati.
EnigmaTV.com.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR. Frequency Radio.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba. For the final half-hour segment of the broadcast, we are discussing the early life of Abram, and we're getting into some interesting territory here. I really tried to complete that chapter before the break. I only had like 4 more verses to go, but didn't make it. So I'll pick up where I left off here, and then I'll read, because this catches up to Genesis 13, so I'll read these 4 or 5 verses from Jasher, and then read Genesis 13, and then turn it back over to you.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I think verse 43. And be not afraid in going from me, for if any one do an injury to thee, let me know, and I will avenge thy cause before him. Only remove from me. And when Abram had spoken all these words to Lot, then Lot arose and lifted up his eyes toward the plain of Jordan. And he saw that the whole of this place was well watered and good for man, as well as affording pasture for the cattle. And Lot went from Abram to that place, and he there pitched his tent, and he dwelt in Sodom, and they were separated from each other. And Abram dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and he pitched his tent there, and Abram remained in that place many years. All right, so that completes that chapter in Joshua. Let me switch over to Genesis, and we will read chapter 13. Genesis chapter 13. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot went with him into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold, and he went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar which he had make there at the first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was a strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land. And Abram said to Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and thy herdsmen, for we are brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take to the left hand, then I will go to the right. If thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. Then Abram removed his tent and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto the Lord. So that gets us up to Genesis 13. I'm not going to go to 14 because that's where we get the Genesis 14 war, and there's all kinds of cool stuff we can read and other texts there. So, anything you want to continue maybe from the writings of Abraham or
I'll
anything
read
else?
the Targum.
Okay, cool.
I'll read the Targum, Genesis 13 first.
Cool.
And Abram went up from Mizraim, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, to go to the south. And Abram had become very strong in cattle, in silver, and in gold. And he proceeded in his journeying from the south unto Bethel, and returned to the place where he had outspread his tabernacle at the first, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there at the beginning. And Abram prayed there in the name of the Lord. And also unto Lot, who was remembered through the righteousness of Abram, there were sheep and oxen and tents, and the land could not sustain them to dwell together, because their possessions were great, and they were not able to dwell together. And contentions arose between the shepherds of Abram's flock and the shepherds of the flocks of Lot. For the shepherds of Abram had been instructed by him not to go among the Kene and the Pharisee, who as yet had power in the land, and to restrain the cattle, that they should make no depredation in going to the place of their pasture. But the shepherds of Lot would go and feed in the grounds of the Kene and the Pharisee, who yet dwelt in the land, Jerusalem, their treasures. And there was strife between the shepherds of Abram's cattle and the shepherds of the cattle of Lot. The shepherds of Abram restrained their beasts until the time of their coming to the place of their pasture, but the shepherds of Lot did not restrain their beasts, but turned them free and went. But Abram's shepherds had been instructed by Abram, their righteous master, go not to the Kene and the Pharisee, for as yet they have possession in the land. And Abram said to Lot, between me and thee, let there not now be controversy, nor between my shepherds and the shepherds, for we are brother men. Is not all the land before thee? Separate then from me, if thou to the north, I to the south, if thou to the south, I to the north. And Lot uplifted his eyes towards the place of fornication, and beheld all the plain of Jardina, and it was altogether well watered, before the Lord in his wrath had destroyed Sodom and Amorah, a land admirable for trees, as the garden of the Lord, and for fruitage, as the land of Mizraim, as thou goest up to Zoar. And Lot chose to him all the plain of Jardina, and Lot journeyed from the east, and they separated the one man from his brother. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the towns of the plain, and spread his tabernacle towards Sedom. And the men of Sedom were depraved in their wealth one with another, and they sinned in their bodies, and they sinned with open nakedness, and the shedding of innocent blood, and practiced strange worship, and rebelled greatly against the name of the Lord. And the Lord said to Abram, after that Lot had separated from him, lift up now thine eyes and look from the place where thou art, to the north and to the south, to the east and to the west. For all the land that thou seest will I give unto thee and to thy sons forever. And I will make thy sons manifold as the dust of the earth, as it is impossible for a man to number the dust of the earth, so also it shall be impossible to number thy sons. Arise, journey in the land, and make occupation of it in length and breadth, for to thee will I give it. And Abram stretched his tent, and made folds for oxen and sheep, and came and dwelt in the vale of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and builded there an altar before the Lord. All right, now I'll go back to the writings of Abraham, because this will pick up with the story of Lot. When I had received this word of the Lord, and he had departed from me, I went unto Pharaoh and told him that I must depart from his realm, as the Lord had a work for me to do in the land of Canaan. Though he was loath to see me go, Pharaoh bowed to the will of God and appointed men from his own bodyguard to escort me to the borders of Egypt, and he gave me gifts of cattle and silver and gold, and fine cloth, and precious jewels of every kind. So I went out of Egypt, and Lot accompanied me, who had taken 3 wives while in Egypt, namely Jennifer, daughter of Eleazar of Damascus, Deborah, daughter of Cuman, who had come out of the city of Ur, and Ashtaroth, daughter of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Traveling slowly and stopping often to camp upon our way, we eventually reached Bethel, where yet stood an altar that I had built there at the first. I restored it to its perfect form, and offered sacrifices thereon to the Most High God. And I called there upon the name of the Lord of all worlds, and offered praise to the name of God, and blessed God, and gave thanks before him for all the possessions bestowed upon us, and for the many souls we had won in Egypt, and for having brought us back safely from that land. Now after our departure from Egypt, a faction arose among our people upon seeing the great wealth which Pharaoh had entrusted to us, for they desired property which they could call their own. Lot also was among them, which thing grieved me greatly. But seeing they would not be reconciled, we gave unto them a portion of the common property, and they departed from us under Lot's direction, and settled in the valley of the Jordan River. There they went from place to place as their flocks needed pasture, until they reached the city of Sodom, where they mingled with the inhabitants and became one with them. Lot also built a house in Sodom and settled there. But of all that company they went out from us. Only Lot maintained his integrity and did not violate the covenants of his priesthood, nor bow to the heathen idol gods. Nevertheless, Lot did not walk perfectly in the way of the fathers, for he dwelt not among the people of God, but built his own house, and he coveted his own property, that he should govern it rather than holding all things common with the saints. Nevertheless, Lot did continue to serve the Lord, and the Lord loved him and his family, and his property grew very large. But I was grieved in my heart that Lot had parted from me, for he had stood at my right hand and had been instructed in a better way. Meanwhile, I with my people dwelt in Bethel, where we did worship the Lord our God, after the order of the ancients, and did strive diligently to establish the holy order of God among us in ever increasing perfection. Wherefore, we did banish from among us all contention, all covetousness, all selfishness, and we were of one heart and of one mind, and dedicated in all our service unto the Lord, and held all things common, for no man calleth anything his own. One night God appeared to me in a vision and said, Go up to the top of Hazor, lift up thine eyes and gaze eastward and westward and southward and northward, and behold all this land. For behold, unto thee and to thy seed after thee shall I give it for an everlasting inheritance. The next day I ascended Hazor, as the Lord had commanded me, and I gazed upon all the land, from the river of Egypt unto Lebanon and Shinar, and from the great sea unto Haran, the whole area of Syre, as far as Kadesh, the whole of the great wilderness which lieth east of Haran, and the region of Shinar, as far as the Euphrates. And as I beheld the land, the Lord my God spake in mine heart, saying, Blessed Abraham, I have chosen thee to stand at the head of a multitude. Wherefore, unto thee and to thy seed before thee I will give this land, even all that thine eye beholdeth, that ye may possess it forever. And I shall multiply thy seed like the dust of the earth. For even as no man can count the dust of the earth, so shall thy seed be without number. Rise up now, and compass this land. Behold the length of it, and the breadth of it. For I will give it unto thee, and to thy seed after thee, forever. Even so, I, Abraham, descended from the high place, and set out to behold all the land. I commenced at the river of Egypt, and came to the shore of the lake beside which I traveled until I reached the mountain of the ox. Thence I turned from the great lake which is by Sodom, and walked across the breadth of the land until I reached Euphrates. Thence I journeyed even unto the Red Sea, which I followed unto its head. Thence I went onward to the river of Egypt again, having compassed the whole land according to the command of the Lord. And when I had completed my journey, I bowed down and praised the Lord, and returned safely unto my family, where I found everyone well. Not many days thence, under the direction of the Lord, I departed from Bethel, and settled in the plains of Mamre, on the northeast of Hebron. And there I built an altar, and offered an offering unto the Most High God, and dedicated that land unto the Lord. And I held a great feast unto the Lord, for the time of the Passover had come, and together with all the men of mine household, I invited Mamre, Anaram, and Eshcol, my friends who were wanderers in the land as we were, and who had joined the believers in the Most High God, into the solemn assembly. And after this, all my people ate and drank together with me before the Lord. At this feast, the Spirit of the Lord fell upon me, and laying aside my garments, I danced before the Lord, and sang unto the Lord a new song, saying, Blessed art thou, O Lord, who hast given unto man knowledge of thy ways, that he might understand thy truth, and seen thy abundant mercies. Blessed art thou, O God, who art full of compassion and grace, for the greatness of thy power, the abundance of thy truth, the profusion of thy mercies over all thy works. Rejoice the soul of thy servant in thy truth, and through thy righteousness make me clean before thee. Blessed art thou, O Lord, for thou hast placed in the mouth of thy servant the sacred words of power, that I might stand as thy minister continually, that I may confer thy grace upon thy children, and that I myself may return to thy presence. Sarah also rose up, full of the Holy Ghost, and danced and sang before the Lord. And this is the song of Sarah. In thee, O Lord, will my soul be raised up, for thou hast bestowed upon me thy grace, whereby I am restored to thy presence. For I have entered into thine holy house, and received the sacred rites of thy presence. Surely in my tent at night I will sing songs of joy unto the Lord, as I am overshadowed by the priesthood, and lifted up in the foreshadowing of eternity. Surely in receiving thy Spirit, through the overshadowing of the priesthood, I have received salvation. Wherefore, in the midst of thy people, those whose reverence thine holy name, I will praise thee and glorify thy name forever. My wife Kedar also arose and proceeded to dance and sing before the Lord. I guess that's Hagar, Kedar.
Or one of his,
and her-
because he had, 7 wives, I think?
Yeah, from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And so I don't know Kedar, but yeah. And her song was, Bless the Lord, O my soul, exalt his name, and among the people I will praise thee, O Lord, upon my bed when the well springs of my joy are opened up. I will praise thee at all times and seasons, and when the sun riseth upon the earth, I will praise thine holy name. And when in its ordered course day reached its turning point at the meridian, I shall not fail to praise thee. Again in the evening, when the daylight departeth, I will marvel at thy wonders and glorify thy name. Then rose up my wife Judith, who danced and sang.
He's gonna have a big party here.
Yeah, right? Saying, "Praise the Lord who hath shown me the wonders of his ways. For as I lay upon my bed and wrapped in the ecstasies of the Holy Spirit, when the Spirit rushed into me, I saw the vision of the Almighty and heard that which is unlawful to be spoken. Yea, O Lord, thou hast visited me, and I have heard thy wondrous secret, and I know that it is true. Through thine Holy Spirit, through the rights of thine holy priesthood, through the glorious inner vision to which thou didst open my mind in the moment of passion, thou hast caused a spring of knowledge to well up within me, a fountain of strength and power, of loving kindness and glory in my God. Thou hast put an end to the darkness of the world in me, and the splendor of thy glory hath become in me an eternal light. Wherefore I will praise thy name forever, and give myself unto thee." When Judith had finished her song, all the congregation, being filled with the Holy Ghost, arose to their feet and began to dance and sing and praise the Lord, and to prophesy in his name. Some saw holy angels in our midst, and others saw the heavens opened, and behold, God seated upon his throne. And all were filled with his Spirit, and shouted praises to the Lord in joyousness until dawn. And then we all rose up before the Lord and praised his name for this great outpouring, and worshipped him all that day. And we rejoiced in the grace of the Lord our God. Previous to this time, Amramphel, son of Nimrod, king of Shinar, Kedorlaomer, yeah, you say it a lot better than I do, king of Elam, Arioch, king of Cappadocia, and Tidal, king of Goyim in Mesopotamia, had waged war against Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinar, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela.
Why don't you hold here, because that's covering the Genesis 14 war.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, we only got 5 minutes left anyway, but that'll cover the. Hold that for next week, because on your show we'll jump into Genesis 14. There was a lot of interesting stuff in what you read there, too. He got the promise from the top of Mount Hazor. I always wondered where he was when he looked out, and God said, everywhere you look, that's yours.
Right.
This is the first time I've seen what he or have read what he could see. I'm not aware of any other text.
Specifics.
Are you familiar with that Mount Hazor? That's not one that I'm familiar with.
I should ask my son though, because he's been all over in that area.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And even with the Mount of Olives and all that, he's told me and shown me on Google Earth, just kind of where they went and everything, and it helps me to understand better. And it's great that he has that knowledge, of walking in the Holy Land and being a witness to some of that.
How long was he there?
He's able to. They went for, I think, about a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was on the 2017, the Revelation 12 sign on, as far as, all of that. And so, yeah, they were there for quite a while. They journeyed from London down through Greece, and then kept going down through that area and ended up in the Holy Land.
That's very cool. I was blessed to go there in 2005 for I think it was 7 days, something like that, a week to 7 days, something like that. But we were part of a tour, so we were pretty much only really able to go where the tour guys took us, which was still cool. I mean, we got to see and do a lot. Certainly got to do a lot. I would love to go back again, though, now that I've been somewhat oriented, and go just to
wherever.
Just go wherever. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a lot more exciting, I think. I mean, it was still amazing. Don't get me wrong. It was certainly amazing to take the tour, but to go where you want to go and stay as long as you want, that would be pretty neat.
Yeah, they went and stayed at a lady's house that they offered her labor and worked in her garden and helped her gather her eggs, and they got to stay there for free.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really cool. I forget, there's some website that allows you to do that. You can go to people's, properties, work for them, and stay there. My daughter-in-law Joy, she has all that information, but yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, my younger years.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they were blessed to do it because for several years, Justin's mother worked for United Airlines, and so they could fly for free on standby. And so they decided to take a few years and just travel and go everywhere, and they did. And so, yeah,
for sure,
it was a great experience for them.
If I could do my 20s over again, that I would have done a lot more traveling. I would have probably lived on the beach of Hawaii,
Right, yeah.
Travel. I would have done and find gigs like that where you can fly for cheap or for free and stay at just to work places. I would have definitely, if I could do anything over again, that's what I mean. I'm happy. I'm satisfied with the way my life has been, but if I could do some things over, that would be something
absolutely.
I would do.
Yeah, traveling's a blessed thing, and I was even blessed from the time of my 20s to my 24th year when I acquired my disability. I basically lived in a van and traveled all across the United States and stayed in all the different national parks and different parks and followed the Grateful Dead for several years as well, and that was a pretty deeply profound experience for me, and so I was fortunate to do that during those times.
Yeah. Well, we are out of time here, so we'll pick this
All
up
right,
next week with Genesis 14 and the elaboration on the various texts. Looking forward to it.
Sounds good. Be blessed.
All right, blessings. Thanks, guys.
Good night, all.
See you next week.